Tonight, a peaceful transition of power.
I think we're going to not be so far behind the curve as we thought we might be in the past.
The latest as Joe Biden prepares to assume the presidency. And a coronavirus vaccine just around the corner. A look at the race to get vaccines approved and the plan to get them distributed. Plus,
within 100 days, I'm going to send to the United States Congress a pathway to citizenship for over 11 million undocumented people.
What immigration would look like under a Biden administration. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. The economy under a Biden administration. Good evening. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup. Thanks for joining us. Well, Joe Biden is quickly building his administration today, naming leaders of his economic policy after unveiling an all-female communications team this past weekend. This all while President Trump continues to challenge the election results. Senior Washington correspondent Tara Merchner is here with tonight's top story. Tara, what do we know now?
Well, John, we're getting a better idea of what a Biden administration will look like after learning who would take key roles in tackling the pandemic and its economic fallout. Biden hopes to stabilize an American economy affected by the coronavirus with his incoming economic team, which includes former Federal Reserve Chair Janet Yellen, who would be the first female Treasury Secretary. If confirmed, Cecilia Rouse, the pick for chair of the Council of Economic Advisors, would also make history, becoming the first black woman to lead the department. There's also a nod to the left with Neera Tanden, who runs the Progressive Center for American Progress as Director of Office of Management and Budget. Diversity clearly a priority. The senior communications staff is an all-woman lineup, with former Obama administration official Jen Psaki set to take over as press secretary. Biden has nominated the first woman, Avril Haines, to lead the nation's intelligence community. In another milestone Monday, the president and vice president-elect receiving their first presidential daily briefing, a process that was initially delayed given challenges to election results.
This election was rigged. This election was a total fraud.
A $3 million recount in Wisconsin, paid for by the Trump campaign, has turned up 87 more votes for Biden. In Pennsylvania, it lost another court challenge on mail-in ballots. President Trump's former head of cybersecurity, who was fired, now piling on about the president's insistence that voting machines were rigged.
There was no indication or evidence that there was any sort of hacking or compromise of election systems on, before, or after November 3rd. We did a good job. We did it right.
The president, his allies, and private litigators have now lost at least 31 cases contesting the election or alleging fraud in 5 states. Meanwhile, as Biden focuses on his transition, he's recovering from a twisted ankle that happened while playing with his dog over the weekend. John.
All right, CBN's Tara Merchner. Thank you, Tara. With me now is California Congressman Ro Khanna. Congressman Khanna, thanks for being back on Faith Nation. 73 million people voted for President Trump. Many agree with him and question the election results, including unverified claims of voter fraud. Congressman Khanna, how can Joe Biden draw in those who are skeptical of his election win?
Well, we need to come together as Americans and recognize that we compete hard, but at the end of the day, we put the country first. And I think he needs to listen to them. He has to understand what has held them back economically, what their anxieties are, and we need to do the best to address them. But we have to come with it with a spirit of reaching out and putting this country back together.
As you well know, Congressman, Republicans picked up House seats at the expense of some of your Democratic colleagues in California and elsewhere. What does that mean come January in terms of legislative policy?
Well, first, there was record turnout on both sides. I think one of the reasons we lost is Trump had huge record turnout in some of these counties. What it means is it's going to require more coalition building. It's going to require figuring out what agenda we have in common. The 2 areas where we could have things in common. Let's have high-speed internet and broadband to every community. Let's not exclude rural communities and minority communities from the 21st century economy. Let's rebuild our infrastructure and bring manufacturing back to this country. Those are the types of things that can pass.
Congressman, speaking of coalitions, will your caucus shift more toward the moderate or progressive wing as you try to appeal to and win back voters ahead of the midterm elections?
Well, I don't think it's about left or moderate or center. I think it's whether we can have a good jobs agenda. So my view is we should have a $2 trillion massive public investment in creating the infrastructure for the modern economy. That's what China is doing. They're building universities. They're putting in cell towers. They're creating a 5G. They're creating incubation centers. We need to do that. So one could say, well, that's progressive. That's a lot of money. I would say, no, that's also going to help a lot of communities that voted for Donald Trump, and Trump was for $2 trillion. The key, in my view, is a bold economic agenda.
Still, as we see within your party, you have the so-called AOC wing, and then you had Abby Spanberger in Virginia talk about disparate views as far as the direction of the party. So which direction do you see the party headed, at least ideologically?
Well, I think they're both friends of mine. I've talked to them both. And I think what the caucus and the country need to do is come together on places that intersect in these agendas. Look, what we're trying to do as a nation is very difficult. There has never been a multiracial, multi-ethnic democracy in the history of the world. People talk about Canada or Britain. They're 80% white. We're 60% white. We've got people from every part of this country. My parents immigrated from India. I was born in Philadelphia in our bicentenary. So I'm confident that our country is going to be able to do this. Of course, there are going to be differences. Where Abigail Spanberg represents in rural Virginia is very different than where AOC represents in the Queens in New York. But we have to figure out how do we give a dignified place for every American in this country, knowing that it's not going to be an easy process.
Congressman, if you can, in a sentence or two, any hope for Americans to see some sort of COVID relief in the lame duck session?
I'm hopeful. Look, I had spoken out before the election saying we should have cut a deal with President Trump. People in my own party didn't like that. I said, let's do something at 1.8, 1.9 trillion. And we didn't. I think that now we need to get something done. There are people who are hurting. They don't want to see politics. Frankly, in my view, is we shouldn't adjourn even for Christmas until we get something done.
All right. Congressman Ro Khanna from California, thank you so much for your time and your insight.
Thank you very much.
Well, Moderna is seeking emergency approval for its COVID-19 vaccine. Data from the pharmaceutical company shows the vaccine is more than 94% effective in preventing coronavirus. And get this, 100% effective at preventing severe cases of the disease. Moderna follows drug maker Pfizer in asking the FDA to grant emergency use authorization for its vaccine. Well, CBN medical reporter Lori Johnson joins us now from our Virginia Beach headquarters. Lori, how soon will Americans see a vaccine?
Well, it could be as early as next week, maybe next Friday, December 11th, probably the next week, though, John. The Food and Drug Administration is expected to issue its emergency use authorization for the Pfizer vaccine next Thursday, December 10th. The vaccine is already being distributed and will be ready to be given as soon as the FDA grants the EUA. The FDA is expected to issue its emergency use authorization for the Moderna vaccine the following week. On December 17th, both Pfizer and Moderna combined have enough doses to fully vaccinate about 20 million Americans. Remember, each vaccine requires 2 doses, 1 shot, then 3 weeks later, another shot. And it's a week after that second shot that the vaccine takes full effect, meaning it's an entire month after the first shot that the person is immune to COVID-19.
Reminds me of the booster shots. Lori, can you explain the plan for distribution once approved?
Well, the governors of the states have the final say about who gets the vaccine and when, although the Centers for Disease Control is meeting this week to issue its recommendations. There are some logistical concerns, John. The Pfizer vaccine has to be kept in specially made freezers because it has to be kept at minus 90 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's colder than most freezers get. The Moderna vaccine, on the other hand, only has to be kept at minus 4 degrees Fahrenheit. Regular freezers can handle that. And also, the Moderna vaccine, once it's out of that freezer, can be refrigerated for up to 1 month.
Lori, when it comes to vaccines, efficacy is one thing. The other thing is vaccinations. We know it's been a quick process to get the vaccines. How effective will the vaccines be, though, if people are afraid to get them? And what's being done, Lori, to assuage those fears?
Well, John, polling from about a month ago revealed 58% of Americans said they wanted the vaccine. That's up from 50%. And so a lot of experts say that trend will continue. And, you know, that's really a lot of people. And combined with the 10 to 15% of the population that's already immune because they recovered from the virus, that's enough to achieve what's known as herd immunity. However, experts expect people to increasingly also want a vaccine when they see the tens of millions of people do very well after getting theirs. And furthermore, the data from clinical trials is going to be posted online so the entire world can see. All lay people, doctors, can all look at it. So this is going to be a very transparent process. And people who are unsure are being advised to talk to their primary care physician about the vaccine.
Lori, we just have a few seconds left. As you well are aware, America celebrated Thanksgiving last week. Despite the many warnings, a lot of people did travel and saw friends and family. When should we be able to see a post-holiday surge?
Well, right. An estimated 9 million people traveled over Thanksgiving. That's about half of what we normally see. But we do know some of these people will spread the virus. We should see a spike in cases in about a week, then a spike in hospitalizations the week after that, and then an increase in deaths the following week. So hopefully those travelers were very careful, and those increases in cases, hospitals, and, of course, deaths will be small.
That is certainly the hope. CBN medical reporter Lori Johnson. Thank you so much, Lori.
Thanks for having me.
Coming up, President Trump's last stand on immigration at the Supreme Court. Details when Faith Nation returns.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep as the world watches from the outside.
It's a big diplomatic tug of war here in the Middle East.
Go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
What starts in Israel then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline Friday night at 9:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Welcome back. One of President Trump's final moves in office could have a lasting impact well beyond what looks to be the closing weeks of his administration. He's trying to weed out illegal immigrants from the census, which could affect how many lawmakers each state gets to have in Congress and the amount of federal dollars states receive. The Supreme Court is deciding whether he can or should do that. CBN's Paul Strand reports.
And immigrants should be counted, as they always have been, since they do actually live here.
The government can do many things to induce undocumented immigrants to leave, but it cannot declare them to be gone when, in fact, they are here and likely to remain.
Before the Supreme Court, Acting Solicitor General Jeffrey Wall argued on behalf of the Trump administration, saying that's just not logical.
Treating someone apprehended at the border on March 31st or scheduled to be removed on April 2nd as a usual or settled resident of the United States on April 1st flies in the face of this court's cases, common sense, and any sound theory of political representation.
Wall's opponents countered that the census properly representing everyone in a state is what this case is all about.
The difference of a few thousand people in a state can mean the difference between gaining or losing a seat.
People who live in a state without lawful immigration status still live there. They are not invisible. And like other residents, voting and non-voting, their presence requires attention from the government and the need for representatives to give that attention.
Wall shot back.
There's nothing usual or settled about your residence if your presence is violating federal law and the sovereign hasn't agreed to let you stay.
But the other side argued for these people's worth.
Undocumented immigrants contribute $1 trillion in GDP, $20 billion in federal taxes, 80% are essential workers, 1 in 4 are homeowners and pay property taxes.
Paul Strand, CBN News, Washington.
All right, thank you, Paul. Well, under a Biden administration, America's immigration policy will likely take a dramatic turn, potentially reopening the door to refugees, jump-starting a new conversation on reform, and putting an end to the construction of a wall on the southern border. CBN's Heather Sells has more.
After 4 years of closed doors to immigrants and refugees, a Biden administration would open them. The question being how fast and how wide.
Within 100 days, I'm going to send to the United States Congress a pathway to citizenship for over 11 million undocumented people.
Right now, some GOP senators indicate it's an area of potential compromise, pushing for a middle ground destination. That would mean no mass amnesty and no mass deportation. It could mean, however, a financial penalty.
Some sort of way that immigrants who are undocumented, who are unlawfully in the country, could come forward, that they could pay a fine as a penalty for having violated the law as restitution, and then they could earn permanent legal status if they, of course, meet other appropriate requirements.
It might not be a priority, though, given that COVID and the economy already top the political agenda. What Biden could easily accomplish via his pen, new protections for immigrants whose parents brought them here.
And all of those so-called dreamers, those DACA kids, they're going to be immediately certified again to be able to stay in this country.
He is also promising admission to refugees, largely shut out during the Trump administration. Faith-based resettlement agencies are already gearing up.
I think we will see a significant increase, and I hope that that can build because this affects a lot of really vulnerable people.
President Trump's target for next year's refugee admissions was 15,000. Biden wants 125,000. That number might be unreachable, however, given that U.S. agencies have had to close or suspend some 100 programs.
We actually had to mothball a couple of our offices that were doing refugee resettlements. We are prepared to open those offices up.
And national security experts warn it could be risky.
I think it is rather dangerous to say we would just increase the refugee admissions to 125,000 in a year and go up from there.
The system can't absorb that kind of swing so quickly. So it needs to be scaled appropriately, and we need to make sure that we don't flood the system like we did in 2015, 2016.
Biden has also pledged to stop border wall construction, although Border Patrol agents say it makes their jobs easier.
Where we've put that in place, we were able to increase our effectiveness from about 10% to over 95%. And more importantly, we were able to pull 150 agents out of that area and then redeploy them to other parts of the border.
These new policies could encourage a surge at the border. It's a possibility that law enforcement is already preparing for. Heather Sells, CBN News.
Thank you, Heather. Up next, the hidden costs of school shutdowns.
On October 1st, 1961, history was made when a tiny station began transmitting the first signals of the Christian Broadcasting Network.
CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network.
And now, a new era has begun with the all-new CBN News Channel.
Just moments ago, the Iron Dome intercepted an incoming rocket right on the Gaza border.
Administering in this area, spiritual warfare is definitely involved.
A 24/7 news network, bringing you the news you want from a source you can trust.
In Kenya, 40% of the medical services are actually provided by these Christian hospitals.
Let's talk about the economy.
Believers here are joining together
to win people to Jesus Christ.
All your favorite shows now in one place. Go to CBNNewsChannel.com to find out how to get the CBN News Channel on your TV all day, every day. CBN News. Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Well, welcome back. New York City is set to begin reopening some schools. Mayor Bill de Blasio says starting next Monday, elementary school-age kids will return to the classroom. This is a sharp reversal on a strict rule that shut down schools if the city hit a 3% COVID positivity rate. City officials cite the well-being of kids for that change of decision. Middle and high school students are not yet able to return to in-person classroom instruction. Well, it is a dilemma many working moms are facing during the pandemic, choosing between children or their careers. When school started in the fall, nearly 900,000 women left the workforce. CBN's Caitlin Burke reports on the possible long-term effects.
Some of the earliest jobs lost during the COVID-19 pandemic were in restaurants, salons, hotels, retail, all industries dominated by women. Then, just as the economy began to reopen, schools remained closed, keeping children at home to learn virtually and forcing parents to make it work.
I was then working from home and also being a teacher. So I'm homeschooling 4 different children, helping them, managing different learning styles, helping them get what they need while trying to, still progress in my professional career.
That became unsustainable for Danielle Thomas, who chose to quit her job as a director for a nonprofit and focus full-time on her family. Thomas is among nearly 900,000 women who left the workforce in September, right as the school year began.
Every mom, every person, period, has to make difficult decisions. But when a mother sees that that things have to shift quickly, we kind of just step in and we make it happen. I knew that I wasn't going to be able to go full throttle in my career and then full throttle as now I'm a teacher again.
One potential downside for Thomas is that according to a Washington Post analysis, mothers of school-aged children are taking longer to re-enter the workforce. Economists fear this could have long-term consequences for working women. The authors of a report published by Northwestern University state that not only will it take longer for these women to find work, they also will find it harder to get jobs comparable to their previous positions. Researchers conclude that could result in decades of women earning less. Meanwhile, this pandemic is also weighing heavy on mothers who are working outside the home.
I'm a manager in my position. I help take care of sick children all day. I was like, and then I have to go home and I still have to teach mine and try to be, a mother to my 8-month-old and then be a teacher to my 1st grader and my 7th grader and then try to be a wife to my husband. The stress and the anxiety were literally starting to give me chest pains.
Dawn Martin returned to work from maternity leave in August. Then, only a month later, she found out her 2 older children would be learning from home.
Going back into the workforce and then finding out that our state still, and then our county weren't going to open our schools back up and, the risk and everything else were going up. And I was like, how am I supposed to help them? How are we supposed to teach them with their teachers if we have to be at work at the same time?
Staying home isn't an option financially for her family. So Martin often finds herself helping with school assignments from work, at nights, and on weekends. Her limitations weigh heaviest when she sees her children struggling.
It really hurts as a parent when you have to ground your child because you know if they were going to school, they'd be in class. They'd be participating. They wouldn't have the late assignments. They wouldn't have the tardiness. And our oldest went from an A, B honor roll to F's to D's.
Many economists say priority number one needs to be getting kids back in school. They're pushing Congress to pass another stimulus with checks specifically for parents with children, hoping to provide some financial cushion to help pay for daycare or private schooling. Caitlin Burke, CBN News.
Thank you, Caitlin. Well, it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. A preview of how the White House is celebrating when Faith Nation returns.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Watch Studio 5 Wednesday night at 9:30.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
Well, finally tonight, Christmas has come to the White House. First Lady Melania Trump debuted the 2020 Christmas decorations at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. This year's theme is America the Beautiful. The White House says the decorations are meant to serve as a reminder of the true American spirit. Among the trimmings this year, 62 Christmas trees, 106 wreaths, more than 3,200 lights, and 1,200 feet of garland, and a pretty price tag at that. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for Faith Nation. We hope to see you again right here tomorrow.